Good morning. Right, today we are looking at Baroque music. Now, this is a historical style of music, and the reason we're looking at it is because while it's kind of fun to go and look at lots of contemporary styles of music and look at modern styles, it's really important to go also have an appreciation and understanding of historical styles as well. The reason being is that everything that's kind of current and has developed today in various different modern styles has all come about as a result of the developments and the technological developments that have happened before, and all the kind of trends and all the different styles of thinking have all contributed to where we're at today. And that's true of anything. It's not just true of music. So Baroque music then. Baroque music saw a lot of kind of innovation, a lot of developments, and allowed people to kind of really push music forwards within the community. So what does Baroque mean? Baroque is a style of music that was popular from 1600 to 1750, and it was a style. It was a style of thinking that was that went throughout art, architecture, and fashion. There's a lot of decoration, and this was included in the music of the time. So it was a style of thinking that wanted to make things really ornamental, wanted to show off, wanted to show how sophisticated it could be, and yeah. So like I said, it wasn't just the music that had this style of thinking. It was also the art, the architecture, sculpture, and that's quite a common thing with music. That the styles of thinking aren't just in the music; they're also kind of throughout all of the kind of art forms as well, and often politics. If we have a look at some of the Baroque art, if you have a look in these pictures here, you can see they're very kind of grand, very expensive to produce. They're very kind of they're not modest. Let's put it that way. They're very kind of showy-offy, I suppose. Architecture is exactly the same. So we've got lots of lovely detail, lots of kind of really fine points. If you have a look at some of these pictures, and the bottom two here, the bottom right one, you can see that all those walls have been kind of painted in beautiful detail. The bottom left one, there's a lot of kind of gold. I don't really know what you'd call it, but gold painted onto the sculpture on that wall there. So very kind of designed to impress, designed to be really showy. An example of this kind of architecture is Kelvin Grove Art Gallery, which you can see has a lot of different detail, a lot of different turrets. They've got different sculptures and bits all around the windows and things. So very, very, very much detail orientated. Fashion, very similar as well, very showy. You can see that the guy on the right's wearing that big massive wig thing, which is probably pretty hot for him. And there's lots of detail on the clothing, lots of frilly bits. The guy in the middle is his collar is obviously pretty fancy, and the cuffs and collars on the ladies as well. So back to the music then. So there are several things that give you a clue that the music you're listening to is from the Baroque era, and that's essentially what we're looking at in these units, is being able to get you to identify if you've listened to this piece of music. Yes, I know that's Baroque music, or I know that's jazz music, or I know that's pop music, or whatever it happens to be, because I can hear this feature. So you need to be able to understand what the features are, how they work, and what they sound like. So Baroque music is very busy. You'll have lots of instruments that kind of have interweaving melodies, and they'll have possibly more than one main melody. If you think about most styles of music, you normally just have one main melody, and then you might have other stuff underneath. You might have a bass line, you might have chords, drum beat. You'd have maybe a counter melody or something like that, but it would be pretty unusual for you to have more than one main melody. So Baroque music sounds very busy. The instruments used most are from the string family. So with a lot of orchestral music, it's the strings that kind of have a lot of emphasis on them. They're right at the front. There's the most of them, so the strings are very kind of prominent, and that certainly kicks off in the Baroque era. You'd also have a harpsichord. Now this is what came before the piano, so it's a piano style of instrument, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. You'll recognize it as looking like a piano, but it works in a slightly different way, and it's got a very different sound. So if we have a look at some more Baroque strings, violin, viola, and cello were very popular. You would occasionally have a double bass depending on what was going on, but violin, viola, cello, same as a normal orchestra, would be the popular ones. You'd also have this one on the bottom right here. Excuse me. You'd also have the one on the bottom right here with the kind of bent back top of the neck of the guitar, which is a lute. So it's similar to a guitar in lots of ways. It'd be played in kind of a similar way. You can see if you look carefully here that it's got quite a few more strings. Now my image is a little bit pixelated, so I'm going to guess that that's either 10 or 12 strings. I think maybe possibly 10 strings on that one. But anyway, so yeah, a little bit of a slightly different shape. The head of it tends to be bent back in that style, but a very interesting instrument. Okay, so having a bit more of an in-depth look at the harpsichord, this is, as I said, was the instrument that came before the piano. It's got a very kind of twangy sound, and it can only play one volume. It can't play loud and it can't play quiet. Now, if you were to take a piano apart, if you were to take the sides and the front off a piano, or the top, you'd be able to see that inside you've got lots of strings, and when you press one of the keys, you have a little wooden hammer which would strike those strings, and that's how the note sounds. So it's essentially a big string instrument in a wooden box that is operated by lots of little wooden hammers. Now, a harpsichord works in a similar way, but instead of having the hammers, you'll have a little quill with a hook on it that plucks the strings as you play. So every time you press a key, there's going to be a little quill that plucks a string, and this is why it's a lot more of a twangy sound. It sounds a little bit like plucking a guitar, but probably a little bit more twangy than that, I'd have said. It's a very kind of distinctive sound, and because of this mechanism, because it's been plucked as opposed to struck with a hammer, that's why it can only play at one volume. So it can't play quiet and loud. It can just play the one. Which is why when the piano was invented and introduced in the classical era, which came next, it was initially known as the pianoforte, which literally means quiet loud, because it can play both quiet and loud. So that's the harpsichord. You can see from the pictures here that they're very, very ornate, very well decorated, and yeah, so that's the harpsichord. Having a look at some other instruments here, you can see that we've got some woodwind ones on the left. So we've got the oboe on the far left and the bassoon. Now, both of these are double reed instruments. You'll remember from doing instruments of the orchestra in S1 that these are both double reed instruments, which gives them a slightly kind of nasal sound, a little bit like a duck, I think. And so yeah, they were common, but they weren't as used as much as they would be today, because if you look carefully at these pictures, they're not as sophisticated as a modern oboe or a modern bassoon. They've not got as many keys. They've not got as many options for different notes and things. So they would be a little bit harder to play. They wouldn't be as versatile. On the top right, we've got a wooden flute, which would be more common in the Baroque era. So before they were metal, they were wooden, which gives it a slightly kind of softer tone. Slightly softer tone, maybe slightly less able to cut through the rest of the orchestra. And then in the bottom right, we've got the trumpet and the horn. Now this gives us a lot of options for different sounds because we are adding to the different sections of the orchestra. But if you look closely, you'll notice that they don't actually have any valves, which if we think about all the notes available on the piano, you've got the black notes and the white notes. If the thing that allows brass instruments to play all those notes are the valves, because you press down on your valves, you've got different lengths of tubing, and if you don't have those valves, then you've just got very limited kind of range of notes. The composition techniques that were commonly used in the Baroque era, you've got imitation, which is very simply just if you've got one idea in one instrument and then it's imitated in another instrument. It might be that it starts off in the violin and then is imitated by another violin, or maybe it starts off in the violin and then it's imitated by the bassoon. It doesn't really matter what instrument it is that's doing the imitating, but it's a different instrument from the original. So that was commonly used. Sequence, which is taking a pattern and then moving it up or down, a step. Changing dynamics, this was another common kind of feature we've got. So that would be playing something quite loud and then repeating it again, but quite quietly, to provide that little bit of variety, that little bit of interest. And then lastly, decoration. Now, the two types of decoration, the instrumental decoration or melodic decoration that you need to know of, are trills, which is moving very, very quickly between two notes. And that's the picture here that we've got on the bottom right-hand corner. So we've got TR written above the note, and then the little kind of wavy line that tells you that you need to be moving quickly between those two notes. That's the trill. And then grace notes, which means to play a short note before your main note. So that's the picture in the top right here. So if you look at the notes that have a little line through, the slightly smaller notes, that is your grace note. So you just hit that quickly before landing on your main note. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate a quick trill for you. So moving quickly between two notes. So my two notes Those two notes there. And a quick grace note. So on the next slide, we've got a quick quiz. So this is obviously not going to be marked. This is just for you to kind of practice before you do the quiz at home. So name the concept that you can hear. We've got our 5 options here. So trill, grace note, imitation, sequence, or change in dynamics. We've got 6 different examples here. Which one are you listening to? Which concept can you hear in these clips? And here you've got your answers. So just check through what you've got. If we have a little look at this picture here of the Baroque orchestra, you can see that we've got the harpsichord right at the front, which is quite unusual. Normally, obviously, you'd have a conductor at the front. So it would normally be the harpsichord player that would kind of lead in this kind of layout. Surrounded by the strings, you've got the first violins over on the left, then you've got your violas and cellos, and then moving around to the second violins. Slightly further back, you've got the double basses, which, as I said before, sometimes you would have, sometimes you wouldn't. And then at the back, you've got much smaller kind of sections of, you've got the woodwind, the flutes, the bassoons, oboes. You've got the brass over on your right. So in this example, you've got natural trumpets, which means they don't have any valves. And then you've got the percussion, in this example, the timpani at the back. So the woodwind, the percussion, and the brass are all very, very kind of reduced. Not loads of them there. It's mainly strings with a big harpsichord at the front. Right, have a bit of a watch of this video and see if you can kind of identify the instruments that we've talked about. This is a good video to give you an idea of how the different instruments sound. You'll see them in action, and you've also got there's interaction between the solo violin and the solo violin and the solo flute, which gives you a nice kind of idea of how the instruments can be used to kind of overlap and share the same melody. Lastly, we've got a quick excuse me. Lastly, we've got a quick practice quiz. And so 6 questions. It's just asking you to identify the different instruments that you can hear in these clips. Okay, so thanks very much for listening. Please now go and do the quiz. It should be available on Teams for you to access. So please don't forget to do that. And there should be audio to accompany that quiz. Any problems, please contact me on Teams. I'll be there. Right. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.